Welcome to this podcast, and this is your host Mirdul Amin Sarkar. So, talking about my profile, it's I'm a market researcher. I'm having 7 years experience in market research, and apart from that, I'm author of two books, and one of the book is Entrepreneurship in Independent Market Research and Strategic Digital Marketing. It is available in Amazon platform and other platforms. And I'm also a professional trainer. I do training, market research and consumer research and all. So now talking about this podcast, I would say it's a one of a kind of a podcast that we produce or sponsored by Market Research Universe. So through this podcast, we actually try to get more insights, talking with industry leaders. Okay, and this can help to industry leaders, mid-level, or initial level, industry, professionals, and as well as aspiring market researcher or researcher or analyst or data analyst and all, professionals, and as well as students who are really interested to gain more knowledge and learning about industry. Okay. Today, the episode is very special uh, because this is something which is you will not able to see a lot of time in other podcast, because this is a podcast. Today we are inviting Dr. Perminder Jit Kaur, and she is a senior policy research or policy making fellow, and she is currently working with IISc, Indian Institute of Science, which is not only India but globally also recognized one of the premier institution when it comes to research. Okay, so that's how I think this is one of kind of a podcast through which we will try to generate some insight about policy making. Okay, now when it comes to policy making, there are a lot of in not of in the sense in every industry, when it comes to government body or uh, you know private organizations and all, or management consulting firms or strategy making firms, they basically work on this policy making to give the suggestion or advisory committee of government body, or who are working in different domain or different sectors. So talking about our India, so we have different sectors like power, then energy, then infrastructure, and then transportation, then BFSI, then banking sector in the sense, and then consumer goods, and different sectors, right? So every sector having their own government body, governing body in the sense, and then to come up that governing body, their main purpose is to regulate that and come up with policies, and so that they can promote that particular industry, get some more revenue, and that ultimately going to help our GDP and our economy growth as a country, right? So that's how policy is very much important to understand, because uh, and why policy is very much important, because if you think, we can easily relate with the education policy in our India, that it is not up to the mark, because there is a huge gap happening when it comes to education. The education that we are getting from our school, from our colleges, the curriculums and all, that is not up to the mark to start your career in industry. So the gap is happening, and to bridge that gap, you have to come up with very practical oriented educations, which exactly you can apply that particular learning, and whatever learning that you can directly apply to the industry, then only you can expect some good outcome of that, or you can easily apply that learning in practical world or real world. So that's why that gap is happening, and bridging that is main is instrument is your policy making. So if you're having good policy, then only it can solve the overall, this ultimately top down approach. So policy making is a top down approach, but that top down approach is ultimately driven by not only the other countries to get take the reference, but also to understand the bottom up approaches, or bottom up in the sense a population, the people, how we can execute that policy towards our industries stakeholders, and as well as the population. Because India, is a very diverse country. Different states having different language, different mindset, and all. So it's not that easy to force a policy, the same policy in every state. Okay, and that's why I think policy making is very difficult here to execute. Even making policy, announcing a policy is very easy, but executing that policy is one of the major challenge that normally policymakers or government facing in especially in our country, India. Okay, because of the same reason, so that's why we are just trying to understand more perspectives of policy and background of policy, I would say. What is the research going on, or the R&D or research, or data analysis going behind the scene, what type of research, how they do research, and some sort of policy challenges, and some sort of future policies that India coming up with. We'll try our level best to make it more easy to understand from anybody who want to understand, who want to enter in this industry, or start their career as a policy making, and as well as to all the policy makers over there, and government bodies who try to come up with a very you know uh, you know applicable policies here in India. That definitely, then this podcast going to help them a lot. Okay, so that's why I will recommend this podcast to all the industry leaders, senior leaders, mid level, or associate level also, and all the students also who want to start their career in this sector. And definitely this is going to help them to come up with some policies making strategies and all. Okay, so of course it is not possible to cover all the sectors. Basically, here we are going today. We're going to discuss, or we're going to cover only the energy and infrastructure sector, and that is more onto electric vehicles, lithium-ion batteries, and bioenergies like biofuel and hydrogen fuel and all. Okay, so hopefully this is going to help a lot to generate some insights of policy making and all. And also we're going to do in this podcast. I will request you to be with us to the end of this podcast, because there are a lot of informations, a lot of kind of key points that we have covered, including like lithium ion batteries, what are the challenges, how lithium ion battery is going to be ultimately it's harmful uh, for society, for our environment, but how that can be solved. Okay, how that is actually, how that is a challenge for us, and how that can solve challenge in the sense, because lithium ion battery when used, so ultimately that is nickel and all other chemicals are there. So ultimately that is impacting our environment, going to under you know underwater, and that water we are drinking, and not only human but also animals also. So ultimately it is you know very harmful for our society, for our planet. So ultimately we have to come up with some regulations, with some policies at the same time, and how that can solve our this environment and all, not only India, for the also the globally and all. So we have discussed this sort of policies, and also hydrogen fuel policies, and electric vehicle you know cars and all. So these all things we're gonna cover this in this podcast. So I hope you understood a little bit of about this podcast. So without further delay, let's start with the podcast. So thank you for joining this podcast, and I hope it will be very impactful podcast uh, for you. Okay, so yeah, let's deep dive. Thank you so much. Ma'am, thank you. Managing your time, and joining this podcast, and it's actually my pleasure that you are managing your time and doing this podcast. So it's the protocol is very simple. We already discussed that it's a very easygoing podcast. So we are just trying to make it more friendly discussions here. Though it's more of an industry podcast, but we are try making our doing our level best to make it more interesting to all our audience. So here that's why we protocol is we just try to get some your industry or work experience, how you start your journey. Okay, so start with your introduction, and then eventually we can process the topics. So definitely we're going to discuss more of policy making perspectives, because of course you are senior policy fellow at IISc. So how that role how you are passionate about that role, how that role impacting uh, our society, or how that role that you are doing. So we're gonna we are more interested to know that also, that how what is that role, and how that impacting to our society and to our industry. So definitely, ma'am, please could you please start with your present role at what exactly you are doing there. Yeah, platform is yours. Yeah.
Yeah, first of all, thanks to you, Mr. Mridul, and your whole team. So it's really nice of you to inviting me for this webinar. So I was going through some of your previous videos also. So all of them are very interesting and informative, and it's very easy to understand most of them. So that's why I found it very interesting to join you here. Yeah, to start with, actually, I did my BTech and MTech in chemical engineering, and then I joined IT Daily for I got more interested in research after completion of my master's. So I joined IT Daily for a PhD program here. So after completion of my PhD, I wanted to do something which is more meaningful, more impactful, which we can there should be some connect between the science which we are doing in the labs to the society. So to understand that, I joined in IT Delhi only as a project scientist, and I've worked on Unnat Bharat Abhiyan. So in that scheme, we were trying to translate lab-based researches to the field. So we used to support the different organization, different research institutes to convert their lab-based technologies to some section of the society. So that was the place where my passion for policy research started. So after completion
Great.
that, I worked as an assistant professor in one of very prestigious university or taught here. But when I came across this opportunity to join DST as a policy senior policy, leave my teaching space and we should join here or not. But after giving a deep thought, I realized that in my previous role, I was able to influence only a section of society, only a group of students. But the present role is about a kind of nation building activity. So, as a senior
Mhm.
policy fellow in this group, we have different teams. Some teams are working in the health domain, some are in patents, some in, like my team, I'm working on the clean technology research. So we are analyzing how we perform the research. We are analyzing the data which is already existing. First of
Mhm.
all, we start our work with the analysis of secondary literature. Whatever information is already there in the literature, like I'm working with green hydrogen, EVs. So whatever policies are already existing, we are analyzing those technologies, those policies through secondary data, whatever is available. So once that research is over, the second step was to generate some primary data to get the feel of the field, how things are happening in the field. So we have prepared a questionnaire which is based on the system thinking. So in any system, there are basically four pillars of a system. So in any system, there are basically four pillars of a system. The first pillar is the knowledge generation, like research institutes, different research laboratories. So they are the knowledge generator in a system. So the second pillar of the system is knowledge consumer, people who are consuming that knowledge, like common people or industries or startups. Whatever the data is generated in the lab, that is getting consumed into some section of the society. The third pillar of the system is a connection between the knowledge generator and the consumer. What is their interlinkages? Knowledge generator and knowledge consumers. And the fourth pillar of the system is the gaps, the needs and gaps and challenges. That what are the weak points? So based on these data findings, based on both primary and secondary research, we have analyzed the gaps in the system. And then we are preparing different policy briefs, white papers, different research articles. So as an outcome of our study, we are doing some publications. So we are making different webinars, presentations, conferences. So whatever is the outcome, that is very important to be communicated to industries, to researchers, even the senior policymakers, so that in future policies, those recommendations can be incorporated. This will help to further strengthen the system. So this way, like our team is basically working on decarbonization technologies. So we have analyzed, we have identified through the existing literature, interviewed them in a pre-designed questionnaire manner, and then identified the gaps and challenges. And accordingly, we have prepared recommendations for the future policies. So this way, I found that this work is actually, we are contributing to the concept of nation building, so that we are able to achieve our net zero targets in a predefined manner.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds very
So
interesting question. I'm getting so curious because I am also, my background is also research background. Okay, so uh, uh, throughout my 7 years experience, most of my work is include, of course, research oriented, or you can say it's a market research driven or research driven work. Whatever you do, data collection or data analysis, or consumer perspectives, or anything. So it's a research driven work. So lot of thing here I'm getting curious to ask. But before that, I just wanted to understand your how you generate this interest. Like you initial days, you started your career as an academician, and then initially, and then now as a policy making, or policy senior policy fellow at you know IISc, which is not only India but globally, it's one of the premier institution in research, of course. Okay, so how you get into that institution, and how that the journey actually, so that uh, so audience who wanted to enter in this sector, and of course I see how they can get into that. Yeah.
yes, so the journey actually began during my school days itself. My father was the greatest motivating force. He always pushed me during my school days also to move ahead in the field of research, take up science and to do more studies in this area. So he actually filled my forms and everything. He used to take care of everything in this area. So my mother was also a science teacher. She also given a strong foundation to me. And my father was very highly excited and very greatest motivation for me. He was in the initial few years only, he found that spark in me that I should take up research because I was very inquisitive, I was very curious to know. And one more thing which is required to do good research is patience. So he felt that I should take up research. So he always motivated me. So when I did my graduation in chemical engineering, so after that, like every other graduate, I also wanted to do job and go into the industry. And my father decided with that, no, you should do masters first, do more research, because you are more keen for research, you are more keen for research. So you should do masters first, because you are a research person. So you should do more of research. So after completion of my graduation, he pushed me to go into the masters. So then after that, I completed my masters. and then he himself applied for my he himself told me he used to keep on doing all this research, that what further I can do, what more courses I should take, what more studies I should do. Explored IIT Delhi, and then I joined PhD here. So doing PhD in IIT Delhi itself, the biggest thing, the biggest advantage of doing research in IIT Delhi, I realized was that I did my earlier studies in state university, so that has given me a good platform, the good background. But going to IIT was a further greater exposure, because in IITs we don't work in silos. The greatest learning in IIT was that you cannot. I worked on a World Bank sponsored project. So in that project, it was not like that. I'm just doing lab based research in my lab only, and then outcome is going into some thesis. So it was not like that. It was a World Bank sponsored big project. So there were 7 departments of IIT which were involved in this study. So we were working on bamboo species which are highly sustainable. So in
Yeah.
chemical engineering department, we were preparing their eco-friendly preservatives, because there are some preservatives which are toxic in nature. So we were
Yeah.
developing eco-friendly preservative for bamboo species. And those species, we did some treatments to bamboos, and then we had given those species to civil engineering people. Then Center for Rural Development was also involved in this, because they knew how to apply, because it's a very low cost material, so it has a lot of application for rural societies, rural environment. So civil department did their strength testing, that whether after the this treatment has not affected the strength of the bamboo species. So it was found that their compressive tensile strength is intact. So then civil engineering department did their strength testing, that whether after and then some people from the design and architecture background, they developed a how to transfer to rural artisans, that how they can develop those plant-based preservatives, how they can. So it has shown me that there should be some connect of your science to your society. You should give, and you should contribute towards the nation building activity. So then that was the greatest motivation when I completed my PhD. So after that, as I already told you, that moving to then Unat Bharat Abhiyan, and then Indraprastha University, and then I came across this opportunity. Department of Science and Technology, they have different centers for policy research all across the India. One of them is in IISc. So this is a fellowship scheme by the Department of Science and Technology, Ministry of Science and Technology. They have a fellowship scheme. So they provide a financial grant to researchers who want to take up policy research in these institutes. And then once you clear all the rounds, so you can apply for, there is ongoing advertisement. We were the 5th batch of policy fellows. So for the 6th batch, there is already an ongoing application. So people who are interested in the policy domain, they can apply under different categories. Like the people who are just basic graduate, so they can apply as a young policy fellow. Then people who are already PhDs, they can apply for postdoctorate fellows. Then people with experience, they can apply for the senior policy fellowship positions. So different teams are there. So we were working different states of the India, and how the states can work in their policy in the same lines as the lines of the national science policy, so that nation is able to achieve their overall scientific goals and aspirations. So the people who are interested in the domain of policy, they can apply for these policy fellowships, or you can, there is one center for policy research in IISc, then there is one center for policy research in IISc, then there is one center for policy research in Punjab University also, all across the India. So DST has started many more centers. There is IIT Hyderabad, then there are in Bhubaneswar also. So there are different cities and different centers are there. Every center has its own mandate, and every any like their own objectives. So depending on your interest, you can apply for these policy fellowships. trust, you can look into those policy centers and
Hmm.
see the opportunity available there.
So it sounds so interesting that I think it's gonna help to all the policymakers or aspiring policymakers who want to enter in this in this sector. And I think uh, I actually encountered a lot of my friends who actually interested in this policy making. And they are basically, their background is economics, and they are quite interested in this enter in this policy making fellow and policy making. Basically, whatever I throughout my knowledge is uh, uh, like all the big fours, like if I allowed to name that, Deloitte, KPMG, PwC, and these big four companies, and also strategy making companies also, like McKinsey and BCG. These companies also very much involved in this policy making work also. So how could you please give more insights about that, and how these, because you are involved with a government institution. Okay. And and those are of course a policy in broader sense. It's a it's there need to be some government institution, government body, like suppose in in every sector, like uh, in banking sector, in education sector, in like energy and infrastructure sector. So in every department or sector, there need to be a policy making body, right? And then it to be a, suppose whatever I understand, it's Niti Aayog. They're normally responsible to come up this like uh, like strategy making, and as well as the regulations and policy making and all this. So could you please tell us how your institution, and how that big force like private organizations or and government body, how they are collaborating, and how they are coming uh, up, bridging that gap, just understand the value chain here. Yeah.
Yeah. So, as you know, our center is funded through Ministry of Science and Technology.
Mm-hmm.
So we are working in association with Ministry of Science. So Ministry of
Mm-hmm.
Science have different schemes. Like I'll give you an example, like in EV sector. So government is coming up with their EV policy, because we have a set target of meeting the net zero by 2070. So we cannot
Mm-hmm.
achieve that target in one day. There has to be some defined pathways through which we can achieve those targets. So there are different government guidelines, like by 2030 we will be 50% renewable, and by
Mm-hmm.
2050 this will be our target, so that we can be net zero by 2070. Now, to be net zero by 2070 and 50% renewable by 2030, there are six parameters which have been defined by the government. One of them is decarbonization of transport sector. So, EV is an important part. EV, biofuel, green hydrogen, all these are renewable resources. So, they can help the environment to be decarbonized. So in Department of Science and Technology, we have an EV division who is working on development of guidelines. We have interacted with different industries. So we have different meetings, different webinars, seminars, through which different industry partners as well as researchers who are actively contributing towards the field, they have been invited. So our team of
Mm-hmm.
IISc, as well as the Ministry of Science and Technology, as well as industry stakeholders, as well as those researchers, all of them were there at the same platform. So different inputs were taken from different industries and researchers, that what are your perspectives? What help do you need from the government? Are like government what percentage of EV in the transport sector by this time? So what support private sector needs? So private sector came up with their own perspective. They provided their input to the ministry, and then researchers have told us about their technology readiness level. Different researchers from all across the India, from IITs, from state universities, even private universities participated in these meetings. So after
Mhm.
getting to know about the everyone's perspective, then our team
Mhm.
started working on development of guidelines. Like in case EV is coming, so there should be some standards also. Those materials
Mhm.
which are startups are producing different EV batteries, EV cars are coming in the market. So whatever product is there in Indian market, that should be
Mhm.
exportable also. The foreign market should also be able to accept those products. So there should be some standards which are acceptable in India, as well as they should be acceptable in the foreign countries also. So we have
Mhm.
started working along with BIS to develop the standards for EVs. Then there is one team who is working on EV. Also is divided into further different segments. Like one of the segment was standardization. Then second segment was to develop the more of the give impetus to the innovative technologies, to give focus to new technologies. Like in market, we have most of the batteries which are lithium ion batteries, but many of the materials which are used in EV batteries, many of them are critical. They are not available in India, as well as, and they are available only in a few limited countries. So for those resources,
Mhm.
we will be dependent on the foreign countries only. So we have given the
Mhm.
impetus to non-lithium ion batteries, to supply of the to provide the funding to those researchers who want to develop those batteries at lower TRL level, and then industry can collaborate with those researchers to scale up those technologies, so that that battery can come to the market. So based
Mhm.
on that, some white papers, some guidelines have been prepared, and then they will be available soon. They will be available in the public domains. So looking at those guidelines, the government, the industries, as well as researchers can get a feel that what is the government's agenda, what government wants, what are our targets in this domain, so that industry can also push their production in the same lines. And what researchers should also align their research in the same lines, that these are the need areas where the government wants some research as well as commercialization from the industry and researchers. So this way, those webinars and those conferences has helped to build a connect between industries, researchers, and government organizations, so that guidelines and those documents can be prepared, which can serve as a guidelines for the future researchers and industries and startups, entrepreneurs. So they can get to know, they can get a feel that yes, there is a lot of demand in this area.
Great,
So
great.
these kind of research can help the to give a direction to all the involved stakeholders. So similarly in quantum mission, so we are performing different stakeholder meetings in which all the stakeholders are involved. So based on, because government cannot set a target randomly that yes, we will achieve this much of the technology level in 5 years. We cannot say randomly. So we have to
Mhm.
involve all the stakeholders, all researchers, all industries who are active in those areas. They can provide inputs to government that by this time we will be able to achieve this much, so that helps us to set some kind of national targets.
Mm. Yeah, got it, got it. So
And
here,
those targets can also be achievable.
yeah, of course. That is the main purpose of policy. What I know, that policy uh, like, suppose when it comes to regulations, normally happen to regulate something which is something not good for society, not good for our human you know perspectives. But when it comes to policy, uh, uh, on the side, just to complete that it's regulation that limiting our human behaviors, or the society which is harmful for us. Like, suppose for the case of chemical products is harmful for us, so there should be some regulations, and government having their own regulations and all. But on the other hand, the promotional, like, policies, like, suppose when it comes to policies, there are a lot of promotional policies. But like, on that perspective, like, suppose I'm taking an example of lithium ion battery or like electric vehicles. it's a it's no more a a budge now word. Now it's already, people are using, and because net zero green revolution happening, and our mission is to come to net zero, as you mentioned, that by 2070, right? India is aiming to get net zero by 2070, right? So how, what are the major challenges now India facing? And then, of course, globally, we can proceed with the globally, but as of now, just understand, what are the major challenges India, as a country, facing for this electric vehicle, electric vehicles. And of course, electric vehicles, when it comes to electric vehicles, the main thing is here, the lithium ion battery. Okay, then again, that is, we have to charge lithium ion battery, and then that charging happening through electricity. Okay, and that electricity is coming from, again, from any power plant, and that is, again, most of that is, again, 70% still, or 80% still, we are getting from thermal power plant. And thermal power plant, ultimately, it's ultimately coming, generating their electricity from burning coal. So ultimately, carbon emission is happening. So how that policies, as you are a policymaker, how that balance is going to happen here? So it is very, I think, that is the big question mark here, that even electric vehicle is coming. Okay, no problem, it's good, because uh, you know yeah, because it looks nice, it sounds like nice, that people are shifting towards electric vehicles, and we should, like all the companies also, like even if I think about, in India, one of the major market share in electric vehicle is now, as of now, Tata. Tata with their Nexon, with their Tiago. These are the cars they already launched, and a lot of other companies, Mahindra also coming up with their electric vehicles, and even SUVs also coming up with electric vehicles. And, but my question is, as a policymaker, what you thinking about this? How do you think by 2070 this gonna balance, or even before this, before that, is this gonna balance? Then what gonna happen with like this thermal power plants, and what gonna, how that going to be, how this going to be a balance in our country, because India is still more depending on coal, and how electric vehicles, and ultimately that is coming from electricity charging and all. So how you thinking on that balancing perspectives? How much realistically you are thinking on that?
So, you are asking a very big question, because this is the question everyone is asking.
Yeah.
Because, the transition from fossil fuel to renewable energy sources is actually, it's not a very easy transition, because right now we are largely dependent on coal, petrol, diesel, these resources. So transition
Mhm.
is not going to be that easy, but still we are working in this direction, because we all are seeing the adverse effects of climate change. It's not just a myth. We all are observing these adverse, these abrupt weather conditions, and these climate change. Sea level is rising, sudden rainfall, suddenly summers. So immediate actions are the need of the hour, that has to be taken. Otherwise, we are on the verge of that calamity. So we have to take those immediate actions, that is must. So based on those needs and hours, these actions have been identified. Now, when we talk about the transition in renewable energy, so there are
Mhm.
different aspects related to renewable energy. It's not a single concept, it's a multi-dimensional thing. So first of all, first thing is the energy production, then the
Mhm.
energy storage, then energy
Mhm.
consumption, and finally the transportation.
Mhm.
So in EV sector, when we are talking about, so in EV also we have different components of an electric vehicle. When we'll talk about the whole value chain, so we have a
Mhm.
battery of the EV, different components which are used to make the EV motor, then the
Mhm.
body of the EV, and then ultimately the electricity which is being used to drive that EV. So
Yeah.
we are working on, we have published a document in T20 group. This year this happened in India also. So in that we have published a policy brief about the value chain analysis of EV. So our team along with OMI Foundation, we have studied the value chain of the EV battery specifically, and we have identified the gap areas that because the critical minerals which are used in the production of EVs, they are not available with any single country. So global cooperation, participation, public private participation, all these things are very important. No one country can achieve independence in energy sources alone. It's very
mm,
important that we all should collaborate together, because it's a very famous saying that unless we all work together, we all will perish together. So it's very
mm,
important that all countries should work together. We should cooperate with each other. So we cannot develop each and every technology on our own. We have to work
mm,
on some leapfrog technologies which
mm,
are already available in some countries. So right now we can use those technologies, and later on in phases we can develop those technologies on our own. So it's very important that we have to analyze the, first of all, we have to develop a very smooth value chain through
mm,
global cooperation and collaborations. And once that chain
mm,
is established, then it's very, yeah, you're right that electricity should also be renewable. That
mm,
should come through some hydro energy or some solar energy. So things will take time because these things are very new. So we cannot
mm,
achieve independence in all these aspects of the value chain in a single fraction of time. So we need to work on these aspects in a step by step manner. So the
mm,
government, as well as not only India, international organizations are working in this area, so that the
mhm,
transition from fossil fuel to renewable energy should be in a smoother manner. And because our India is still a developing country, we have resources, but there are some countries, suppose countries in Africa or some underdeveloping countries who are totally dependent on coal based resources. So since we are moving to renewable energy, but those countries are still emitting, so overall the climate objectives will not be achieved. So
mm,
these things are under the science diplomacy and science cooperation and collaboration. So international organizations are considering all these aspects to develop a roadmap, so that transition in the renewable energy across the whole world is achieved in a systematic manner. Like in the COVID
mm,
case, we have seen that uh, you are able to control your own health. That is not sufficient. We have to
mm,
take care of health of everyone. It should be
mm,
an inclusive approach. So like in one health approach, we have seen that everyone should be healthy. All around us are healthy, then only we can be healthy. Similarly, in energy sector also, all the countries of the globe are able to move towards the renewable energy, then only we can say that the whole globe is safe.
mm.
So things are
Interesting.
part of global policy making. Like in T20 groups, we were part of the T20 groups discussion. So these things were the part of the discussions there. That we should give all the developed countries should provide a hand holding to underdeveloping countries, so that they can also move. They can also undergo a transition in their energy sector and the whole value chain of EV. There should be some certification methods where we can
Mm,
say that the whole value chain of this EV is clean. This is there should be some standardization techniques should be there. In our policy brief, we specifically stressed on the need of a traceable and transparent data.
mm,
There are some researchers who came up with the concept of battery passports. Like we human have a passport, so looking at our passport, you can know the history of a person, which places a person has traveled. Similarly, a
mm,
battery should be also, the data about a battery should be available all across everyone. Once we pinch the QR code of that battery, so we should be able to understand the components that battery has is consisting of, and the like its life cycle, how many life cycles it has already undergone, and what is the
mm,
and after once that battery has reached the end of their life, so what is the fate of that battery once that battery has meet its end of life? So are we going to send it to some landfill, or we are giving some suitable treatment to that battery? So all these components are part of our discussions in that policy brief.
mm, mm. Sounds good and making sense actually. So I was also thinking, throughout my experience, I also, being a researcher, yes, of course, we are not a policy advisors, but we do some market research and all. But what about, from my understanding is, of course, as you were saying, that it's not only a country's contribution, it's a global contribution. Like other countries also should, coming up with the same goal, then only it will happen. Like, of course, as I think, because you also mentioned that, in this G20, this uh, G20s, all other countries are coming up, came here to, come up that kind of, that's why the, slogan is one earth, one family, one future. So India taking a good, very, good initiative for this. So because you mentioned that you are contributing some kind of a policy making, sense on that. So how you, what you have done there? I mean, what your role as a policy making person, as there are a lot of policies, through G20, our government can, announce at least, and it may take some time to, execute those. But as of now, they announce, policies, for the case of, biofuel, for the case of, green energy, of course, and these electric vehicles and all. So uh, could you please mention some of the important policies that they announce in G20, that going to be a revolutionizing Indian, and as well as global, perspectives, for the case of, these green energies and all, because your domain is more onto green energy and all.
So during this T20, the government of India has tried to make it people's G20. So there was a thematic group in this G20 which is known as T20. So under this
Hmm.
group, the research ideas from the researchers as well as industry from everyone across the country were invited. And then based on your proposals, some proposals were finally selected, which were considered for discussion during the final meetings which were held between different countries when all representatives were here. So our policy, we were very also very proud to say that our policy brief was also selected for the discussion there, and some of the key recommendations were considered. Like we
Hmm.
provided the recommendations for there we mentioned that there is a strong need for regulations to standardize the data generation on end of life of batteries, and the data should be available all across the globe. The batteries should be traceable. There should be some uniform regulations which are required. There is need to discuss among various nations for efficient battery tracking mechanism, battery collection responsibilities. Although in Indian guidelines, it is clearly mentioned that battery collection guidelines are there, but it should be a part of all policies across the globe, which has been accepted by the global organizations. Then there should be some global fund. So we talked basically about the battery recycling technologies. There are some
Hmm.
technologies like pyrometallurgical technique and then hydrometallurgical techniques. These techniques are well established technologies through which we can extract the valuable metals from the electronic waste or waste batteries. But there are some innovative new technologies like chelation technology or green adsorbents which are available, but they are in nascent stage. They are just in the lab scale. So there should be
Hmm.
some global pool. There should be some global fund which could be given to researchers who want to do to increase their technology readiness level to commercial scale. So these demands were accepted during the T20 group discussions. And then the technological support for this through government schemes, there should be some financial support for these technological innovations through special call for proposals, global fund to improve the recycling capacities. Monitoring and adoption of these guidelines is very important. So it has been suggested that there should be an international committee who can take care of the recycling component of all these batteries, which can be monitor how these guidelines are because just formation of guidelines is not sufficient. So there should be some
Hmm.
committee who monitor whether these guidelines are implemented or not. So all these points were discussed, and some of them were taken as key components in the final G20 communication document.
Okay, okay, very
So
interesting.
in a
So here,
similar way,
I,
with the coming Brazil T20 group proposal. So any researcher, any person who is interested in policy making, he can give his suggestions for this year's T20 group, G20 group. So in case your recommendations are considered worth of the global value, then they will be a part of G20 group. So any researcher, any industry person, anybody who wants to make some contribution can provide their recommendations to these groups.
Yeah, okay, okay, very interesting. Yeah, just I wanted to ask one question here because you are saying that uh, that which is something new for me also, that you are recommending as a policy because you are a senior policy maker. Okay, so uh, and you are recommending, and you already mentioned that you recommended this to G20, committee, their policy making committee. So some of these points they have taken and some of not, but here I'm not going to ask that in details, but I just want to understand for the particular lithium ion battery you have mentioned that uh, it need to be it need to be identified, or some as you mentioned some like lifespan. I mean, per lithium ion battery particular one individual lithium batteries need to be identified uh, domestically as well as globally, right? Like suppose like suppose uh, I may sound very layman, but we have Aadhaar card. Okay, I may sound very layman, but we have Aadhaar card or we have identity, own identity. Okay, that actually help us to applicable to suppose I want to open a bank account, or I want to in India it's UPI now. Okay, just because of this digitalizations happened, and that's why it's become very easy for us to you know get benefited because of this one one nation one ID, something like that. So here, how lithium ion battery, you are mentioned that lithium ion battery need to be also something like that identified globally, uh, uh, or the identification need to be digitalized. Why this is very important, and how that going that how the policy making is perspective is going to change that actually. Yeah, and why it is
So
needed.
these batteries, or when actually earlier we have worked on electronic waste also. So they
Mhm.
are consisting of various kind of precious metals. Like they have
Mm,
nickel, cadmium, chrome, copper, as well as lithium as an important part of them. So in case
mhm,
those batteries are not treated in a scientific manner, so what will happen?
mm,
We will put them in a open space in landfills. So over a
mm,
period of time, they will be kept under the sun, the rain will come. So some of those
mm,
chemicals will leach, those metals will leach into the soil. And once they enter into the soil, through the rainwater, they will go into the drinking water, and they will
mm,
become a part of our food cycle, our environment cycle. So it's very
very,
important that
very dangerous.
those
Yeah.
those batteries and as well as electronic waste, they should be treated in a
Mm,
scientific manner. There are two disadvantages. One, that leaching of metal will affect our health, and secondly,
mm,
those metals are very expensive. So one, when we can reuse them, we can put them into second use, we can make new
mm,
batteries out of that metals. So we are
mm,
losing those valuable resources which we could have
mm,
recovered in a scientific design manner. And secondly,
mm,
they are affecting our human as well as the whole, all the animals which are available
mm,
in the planet. So we are affecting everyone's health. So it's very important
mm,
that those batteries, what happened to those batteries at the end of their life cycle? Suppose an
mm,
EV battery has stopped giving its life. So what we can
mm,
do? Initially, we can see whatever the chemicals which are missing, we can refill those chemicals, and then we can put it into second time use or three time use or fourth time use. But a stage
mm.
will come when further refueling will not help. So that it
Possible.
cannot be used for EV purpose, it cannot be used for mobility purpose. So then we can put
Mm,
them into some stationary application usage. But a
Mm-hmm.
stage will ultimately come then when that battery will not even be suitable for stationary application. So what will
Mm-hmm.
happen to that end of life battery is also very important. So these things should be part of the guidelines, the initial
Mm-hmm.
guidelines only, which we are formulating for EV batteries at the initial stage. Right now, we don't have much of the disposed batteries because their life is around 8 to 10 years or even longer. But ultimately, a stage will come when this thing will happen. So, those guidelines should be an integral part of all the EV batteries and as well as EV policies at the global level right now. So, that was our recommendations.
Sounds good. Now making sense now, because that is ultimately not harming our pollution, but it's ultimately affect or not only like human body, but also affecting the animal like the whole ecosystem actually.
Yes,
Okay,
the
so
whole
as we are
ecosystem will
drinking
be
this water.
affected. So their treatment will serve the dual purpose. One is the waste minimization and the protection of the environment, and secondly the value generation because those metals are very expensive and we don't have much of their resources, so we cannot afford to
Mm,
lose them.
exactly. Yeah, sounds good. So, so now. Linking that actually policies like as it's ultimately the parent is this policy making and all this ultimately in green energies or these bioenergy you can say. So coming to these actually, because you have mentioned that you have worked uh, more of hydrogen and bioenergy also. So I mean, uh, I being a market researcher, I have done some projects on hydrogen fuel. So here the contradiction happening is like as of now we are more focusing on electric vehicle. Okay. Now, electric vehicle uh, is because we are focusing because to balance the IC engine or traditional engine IC engine
Fossil
driven
fuel
car,
based vehicles.
fossil fuel based, yeah, exactly, fossil fuel based engines. Now to balance this the alternative is we are coming up with electric vehicles. Now there are also R&D is going on or research is going on, uh, uh, the alternate of electric vehicle like, and that is nothing but hydrogen fuel. So how, if I think about, it's maybe very futuristic because as of now we are more busy with electric vehicles and coming up with the balance, and that only happened. Whatever my understanding is, we have to not only electric vehicle as is running through as you mentioned lithium ion battery, and lithium ion we are coming up with recycling lithium ion batteries and a lot of policies to make lithium battery very safer and all. But ultimately it is charging through electricity, and electricity coming from thermal power plants. So main what is things is to policy also need to be focused on balancing the power generations also, that also
Yes,
happening because
that is also a
yeah.
part of the value chain. So there should be a
Yeah.
method of certification of the whole value chain, starting from that
Mm,
source of electricity till the end of the life of the vehicle. So the whole
mm,
value chain should be clean. Then only we can say that this is a clean electricity.
mm,
Some of these questions are under consideration. That the whole value chain should be sustainable.
mm. And now interestingly because I am, my background is mainly in energy and power. So yeah, of course, initially I was doing research by 2030. We are expecting that it will be around 30% or 40% of that renewable. Okay, and as of now, thermal power plant or coal, generations is or electricity is around 70%, but it will decrease, and renewables will increase. So we are expecting that by 2030 it will be a balanced. If not 2030, by 2035 or 40, we are expecting that it will be balanced like 30, at least 30 or 40% renewable energy. So that kind of a balancing, then it will happen actually, because then the whole, as you mentioned, then the whole system, whole industry, or whole value chain. Because if I only consider our electric car, that is need to be considered the charging station, and need to be considered about the not only charging stations through like thermal power plant generated electricity, but not also from solar, maybe from wind, maybe, and all. But what do you think that if we expecting that 2030 or 2035 or maybe 2040 it is going to be happen, then what are the major present challenges that, as a policy making person, what are the major challenges that industries and all other stakeholders are facing to executing these policies? What are the major challenges and how that challenge can be solved? Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the major challenge is the financial gaps. So because
Mm,
many of these technologies I mentioned about recycling technologies or development of Indian electrolyzers, where the stacks we
mm,
most of the stacks we are not producing in our country. So to get the
mm,
mineral for those stacks, so many of these technologies, some of these technologies are in nascent stage. So funding is one of the major gaps which everyone is
mm,
facing. Then we have to overcome our silo thinking. We can't think alone. So we have to be global cooperation, interdepartmental cooperation, public and private
mm,
partnership is very important. And then also there is one
mm,
of important that drawback which challenge which we have seen is the resistance to change. People, it's
mm,
very consumer acceptance is also very difficult. So there should be
mm,
more awareness and education about these new policies, these new
mm,
programs, some more incentive for green innovation, interdepartmental collaboration should be there. Then while our interaction with the industry, one more challenge which we observed was that lack of skilled manpower. Nowadays we don't have people who are trained in these new technologies, so industry
mm,
is facing challenges to get the skilled manpower. So more skilling courses through collaboration with Ministry of Skill Development or CII, they are also required. And then
mm,
data driven decision making, data is the gold nowadays. So more data
mm,
should be generated which is available in more open manner to everyone, so that the decision making can be done in a scientific manner. So these are
mm,
some of the challenges which we have observed.
mm. Good. Interesting. So now, coming to this, hydrogen and bioenergy. So, like hydrogen, I was talking about hydrogen fuel. So, before that, I just wanted to, just inform you that, throughout your policy making experiences and all these, how the whole value chain need to be changed. That is important. So that I understood, and I think eventually we can make it more clear understanding. But as of now, just get to more. I just more getting more curious about this, hydrogen fuel, because electric vehicle is there, and then and then future is again hydrogen fuel. So as a policy making perspectives, how you predicting that uh, by which year or by which how much time it will take to at least come with a balanced electric vehicles, and how much the percentage or balancing, or I would say the market share, in our as a market researcher, going to be happen on the hydrogen fuel driven car also. Yeah, like you can, if you give some prediction, like as if you are a policymaker. So I just wanted to understand the trends as well. What is the trends going on, and how you are predicting how much time it will take to at least balance with the electric vehicle, and of course hydrogen fuel cars also, when it will come, and how they gonna
Yeah,
balance this.
so actually, actually, India is a very diverse country, and all the
Mm,
states have a lot of authorities to formulate their own policies. So it depends a lot
mhm,
on the region of the country we are talking about. Like in Delhi, the acceptance of EV is very high. The people are much aware about the benefits of EV, and we are facing this problem of pollution every day. So people are more easily, there are more availability of that EV charging infrastructure. So all these things
mm,
will contribute to the acceptance of EV to the general public. Then also depends on the kind of the transport we are talking about. Like green hydrogen is particularly valuable for the decarbonization sector, where direct electrification is challenging, such as heavy duty transportation, shipping or aviation, or long distance energy storage, high temperature industry applications, or decarbonization of the hard to abate sectors like cement, steel, or ammonia plants. So it will depend on the kind of the transport sector as well as the region of the country. But yeah, the
mm,
change is quite positive, and we hope that by 2030, because like in biofuel policy, we are seeing that the government is able to achieve the target much ahead of their deadlines. So we hope
mm,
that in to see some positive results in EV and hydrogen sector also.
mm. I think I was just going through one article of journals that our transportation, minister Nitin Gadkari, he also coming up this, these policies. He's quite interested, interested to these kind of policies like, biofuel or this. So that actually I think going to be actually driving these kind of policies, sooner I think as they are expecting. What do you say, ma'am, on
Yes.
that?
Yeah, like in solar energy, initially nobody, when we started with the solar mission, so nobody was
Mm,
able to accept the fact that we will be able to achieve such a low cost solar energy so soon. So the way we
mm,
have reduced the cost of the solar panels, and we have achieved the large percentage of the country on in the independence in the field of the solar energy. So
mm,
similarly, 10 years ago, nobody has thought about the EVs, but nowadays we can see such a large percentage of EV on the road. So
yeah. Mm,
in the field of renewable energy also, we cannot depend solely on one kind of energy, either
mm,
solar or either wind or hydrogen. We have to use a
mm,
combination of all these depending on the resources, depending on the
mm,
region, because we have a very diverse country. So depending on the
mm,
part of the country as well as depending on the mode of the transport or industry. So we have to use a
mm.
combination of all these resources.
Making sense, making sense. Because I was getting, confused about if, we are running towards electric vehicle, and then again the future is, trends is coming up towards, hydrogen fuel driven car. So ultimately, the solution is as, uh, as if I talk about only India, we are very diverse, and if you think about different states, different having different, environments, or weather wise or different. And I know transportation wise also different. Okay, because in hilly area that need to be something, very, which having high horsepower, so that they can at least, you know drive in a hilly areas. But when it comes to, like, plain areas, like suppose in Delhi, or I am, like, I am from Kolkata, so it's plain. So here, these are the cities where the pollution, air pollution is very huge. And if you talk about Delhi,
Yes.
it's a really, yeah, it's very, it's come, I think, world's topmost polluted city. So, and
Yeah, so
then China,
that's actually
and then these
sad.
are the countries, or yeah, yeah. So I think the sense is, or recommendation should be, is like, it to be balanced, and those are the polluted cities. It need to be regulated first. Like if I talk about Delhi,
Yes.
Delhi need to be regulated, not use IC engine driven cars, but rather use electric vehicle. And of course, over the time, that need to be, like, if you hydrogen fuel driven car also is going to come here. So that need to be balanced. So as because in
Yeah,
plain area you don't
we
need
can take
high horsepower.
the example of London. Once upon a time, it
Mm,
was one of the most polluted cities, but the country has banned the entry of the vehicles inside its city. So this city,
Mm.
so particularly, so nowadays the pollution is less. So some strict regulations are the need of hour, but they are actually very difficult to implement. And general, it's very
Mm.
difficult to accept by the general public. So first step is maybe the availability of a large network of public transport and their acceptance by the general public.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. Even when as you mentioned that that transportation, public transportations. Then if I talk about Singapore, they basically most everybody the everyday daily office going employees, they normally use public transportation. And but in India we normally use our personal car. So it need to be regulated, if not the rural areas, but at least the major cities or major industries,
Yes.
metro, like in like Delhi, like
But
Mumbai,
government
Kolkata.
alone cannot work. So it's we people only who are a part of the government and the public. So unless we are open, we are less resistant to those changes and those regulations. So nothing can happen.
Yeah, because ultimately it is, if you think about it, is our nation, but obviously this earth is ours. It is our earth, our planet, it's earth. So ultimately it's our responsibility to making whatever we are using with proper come up with proper educations, and you should understand that this is global warming happening. And that's why I think in India we have that mindset that if you earning good, then first is living standard is you need to
Buy a
buy
car.
buy a car. But even of course you need you it's up to your personal life, your living style or lifestyle, it's okay, you purchase a car, but you try to balance that. What I think, try to balance that through not daily drive your personal car daily or office going
Yeah, so
purposes.
because there
Yeah,
should be some alternatives also, because public transport should be easy, should be approachable,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
pedestrian pathways should be clean and accessible to
yeah,
everyone. They should be safe for the people to walk. So those things should be taken
yeah.
care of. Then only people will be more open towards the public transport as well as walking or cycling.
Yeah, yeah, making sense. So I think the conclusion is whatever we have discussion is, it need to be balanced, at least if not the rural areas persons, but in metro cities, like very polluted cities in India, especially Delhi, Kolkata, Mumbai. These are the cities which are very having huge traffic and air pollutions and all. Then they need to be at least not only the policy making, because it is policy is something which regulations coming from top down approach. But if you think about bottom up approach, we are the people. We are the responsible. Every individual is responsible to uh, make this change, or change this. And so that's why I think recommendations should be to all the you know Indians and global news, or especially in India, definitely city peoples, city populations need to uh, you know understand this, and at least don't drive your car or personal car daily office and going purposes. Use public transportation and all.
Yes,
Okay, so what do you say about that?
exactly.
Public
So
transportation.
the as like the way we have said that the health of one means is good for the health of everyone. So similarly, if we'll work together, then only we will survive together.
Yeah, exactly. Sounding good. So now I think now the balancing factor that I was asking you, because that hydrogen fuel. So ultimately, as you as a policymaker, and if I wanted to understand the trends, then you are saying that over the time, like by 2030, if not 2030, but throughout our discussions, I can conclude it like suppose by 2040 we are expecting that then there will be a kind of balancing of electric vehicle,
All
and
these
as
kind of
well like
yeah, biofuel,
electric
green
vehicle,
hydrogen, solar,
green
wind,
hydrogen.
EV, so all have to contribute together to achieve the net zero target.
Great, great. Sounds good. Sounds good. Okay. So now, could you please tell me something about these technologies perspectives, like when it comes to hydrogen fuel and all these bioenergy technologies, how these technologies is ultimately contributing this sustainability, like all. This is going to be the last second last question, and that will be the last question again, but this is the second last question. I'm taking so much time of yours, but yeah. So how could you please focus some light on the technology perspectives of how this going to these technologies like hydrogen and sustain are going to help our sustainability and all. Yeah.
Because like in sustainability, we have different sustainability development goal SDGs, like our SDG 7, which is the goal of clean energy. Then we have SDG
Mm,
goal 12 of responsible production and responsible action, which is SDG 13. So none of these SDG, among all the 17 SDGs, none of these SDG we can achieve alone. All those
mhm,
SDGs are intertwined. If we are moving towards the clean energy, we are doing the responsible production, we can achieve the climate control. So,
mm,
fulfillment of one SDG help in the achievement of the other. Now, when we move
mm,
towards the cleaner energy, like hydrogen,
mm,
the good thing with
mm,
hydrogen is that it's totally non-carbon based. There is no carbon, so it's
mm,
totally non-emitting source. There is no carbon emission. There is no soot, nitrogenous
mm,
particle or sulfur particle emission. So that way, it's
mm,
a total clean source of energy. Once hydrogen,
mm,
which is produced through solar energy, electrolysis of water, which is run through the solar energy, so that is known as green hydrogen. So that is a
mm,
totally clean source of energy. So it offers
mm,
a lot of opportunities towards the sustainable development goal, which we are talking about to control the climate, to decarbonize the environment. Similarly, EV, bioenergy, green hydrogen, they all are an
mm.
important part for the smoother energy transitions, and they can contribute directly to shape the policies that promote sustainable development in India as well as globe. So, to give the impetus to, like, specifically talking about the green hydrogen. So, to
Mm,
produce green hydrogen, then first of all, the production of the hydrogen that includes the electrolysis of water through solar energy, then its storage in different. How do you store that hydrogen? So, lot of research is going on in the, like, in storage in the form of the underground silos or in the storage tanks or through pipelines. How will you transport that hydrogen? In, suppose you were talking about the hydrogen vehicle, so we also need
mm,
hydrogen pumps across the country where you can refill your hydrogen. So all these infrastructure has need to be developed before we move
mm,
totally
mm.
towards hydrogen based vehicles.
Sorry to interrupt, ma'am, because that the this is ultimately infrastructural problem that that happening with electric vehicles also. One of the major
Yes,
challenges that we consumers or we people are facing is people are kind of
charging
uh,
infrastructure.
yeah, they are ready to shift towards electric vehicles because they're understanding this pollution happening and all this. But the major challenge, because we have done a electric vehicle consumer research also, so major challenges they are concerning about, they are not, it is not about awareness, they already aware, but it is about the infrastructural issues. Because if you purchase electric vehicle car and you good to be in the area of 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers in the your own city, it's okay. But if you are going outside or for a long tour or long drive, then it's not suggestible. They are getting scared about to purchase electric vehicle for long drive. So that's one of the reason is infrastructure, because infrastructure is not there, charging stations are not there. So so on that, policies are there, policy making happening, policies is coming, and infrastructure is. So how soon you are expecting that these infrastructures like electric vehicle charging infrastructures, and as well as hydrogen fuel these infrastructures like infrastructures or going to happen in India, how soon, I mean, as a policymaker, I mean, is it by 2030 or is it by 2040? What is your predictions
So
now through.
no, actually, that's very difficult to predict. No one can predict because things are still under development. So there are a lot many factors which come: political, social, technological. So there are many factors which will influence them. So it's very difficult to say any deadlines or any timeline by which we will be able to achieve. But yeah,
Is there
change is
any
possible.
policy that you are working on that is saying more about that, that by 2030 or by, because government, and most of the time government announcing this, like in G20 also, in other policies also, or even election is coming, election is coming, and all other activities is happening. So is there any kind of a policies that you are working on, or you're doing research on, to come up this kind of policies to which can give you some insights or give us some insights to predict something, like, or you can expect at least those who want to purchase electric vehicle, not for the purpose of daily office going purpose, but also for long drive. So how soon they can expect, like, is there any kind of a policy that we are working through that you can get some
Yeah,
insights
actually,
for?
these guidelines come under the state government. So different states have their own policies. So I hope that will happen very soon because some states are very proactive and they are providing a
Hmm.
lot of infrastructure, UP, Delhi. So I'm aware about these
Hmm.
states. So a lot of like different ARWS are their societies are involved. So even local places, people, the government is providing support for development of charging infrastructure and also for the development of fast charging infrastructure so that it
Yeah,
takes less
exactly.
time.
Yeah, yeah. Because AC and DC, whatever I understood, AC charging station, DC charging station, DCs are very fast and all. Yeah,
Yeah.
fast charging is needed, because if we go, and we have to wait 1 hour to charge our car, then it will be very
Yeah, yeah.
difficult for us.
So this
We
is
need to be
under
at
the
least
state government. So it's different states are providing the infrastructure to their residents so that more impetus is given to it.
exactly. And I think I can assume, or predict that hydrogen fuel car also, also going to be in trend. And I think India, I think Nitin Gadkari, I think already launched a car in Mumbai, light hydrogen fuel. But yeah, they are, and
Yeah,
also a
there are
transport.
hydrogen buses also.
Yeah, hydrogen buses also. Yeah. Yeah, hopefully we are expecting this very soon in India,
Yeah.
going to be balanced, because I'm from Delhi. I know how it feels like, sometimes I'm just going outside and I just don't know, I just, it feels like I'm crying. It feels like I'm crying, and
So that
dropping
time it feels
water from
very,
my,
yeah, your
yeah.
eyes are hurting.
Yeah, it's very irritating, actually. It's very irritating, to
Hmm.
for our eyes, and overall our health, and respiratory systems and all. So that's why it need to
Yeah.
be, it need to be regulated, and policies, not a lot of policies should come. Okay, thank you,
Yeah.
ma'am, and thank you for this detailed discussion about policies, uh, and very interestingly that you have mentioned that to all the aspirants, that if they wanted to come into industry, then how they can get into this, in IISc, even as you were a senior policy fellow in IISc. So of course this podcast want to help them to understand this process. And of course, thank you for giving some insights about your work or role, that how you come up with these policies and all. And here, just I am getting curious about one thing. Like, suppose India, as you are a policymaker, uh, so how you getting reference from these policies when you start working on these policies? Should you take reference from any developed nation to execute that policy in our country?
No, because India is a totally different country. Our strengths and challenges are different than the other countries. So we specifically look into the ground root realities of our country. So it's basically bottom up approach. So we generally look at the stakeholders, interaction with the stakeholders, and which help in the formulation of overall guidelines at the national level. because our
Got it.
conditions are totally different than other countries. You can take some good examples which can be included, which are relevant for our country also, but then it has to be seen that whether they are applicable in our conditions or not.
Hmm. That's been ultimately, I was used to think that, policies are like, suppose I did my MBA in, power management. So there, the policies is basically taken from developed nations, most of the policies. But again, that is top-down approach of the, making the, draft of policies or regulations. But in India, because every policies or whatever the developed nations they are using is not applicable in our country, because our country is diverse and, different
Yes.
situations we have to face there. So that is not applicable. So
Geology, people,
whatever.
social acceptance, technology level readiness, our finances, availability of natural resources. So everything is different.
Yeah, that's why bottom up approach is also very important to understand every, states, how they are accepting their, that policies or not, and then finally I think they uh, come up with their final announcement of
Yes,
that. Okay, pretty much, satisfying now on that policy making, because I was getting confused on that. But yeah, thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much for making your time for this podcast.
it
So
was my pleasure.
yeah, and it was very interesting, very impactful, I think, for our audience also, to understand this policy making was. And then of course the, some trends about electric vehicles, some trends about, energy, but hydrogen fuel and all. Okay, so thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. And it would be a
Thanks to
pleasure
you.
again for another podcast maybe in future
Yeah,
time.
sure.
Thank you,
All
ma'am.
right.
Thank you.